Now, we're going to kick off on the subject of really remembering the war. This has been an important theme, particularly over the last few days and certainly over the weekend. And I had the opportunity to attend a local event here in Devon. It was close to Yelverton on Dartmoor, and this is effectively the site of the old RAF base, Harrowbeer. Now, it was a fantastic 2 days. I've got a little bit of video clip here to give you an idea of what was taking place. But of course, this little clip is bittersweet because people having fun, very enjoyable time. The sun was shining. But at the end of the day, it was memories of war and, of course, the hundreds of thousands of people that died from the UK side and the millions of people that died worldwide. Let's have a look at the clip and then we can just discuss it a little bit.
My poor heart is jumping. You really started something. I'm up in heaven when I'm in your fond embrace. I'm up in heaven when I'm in your fond embrace. 'Cause my dynamite just changed her mind about me.
Well, there we are. The weather was superb. There was actually a huge amount of people. Many people attended both days because they found the Saturday to be so tremendous. And as you can see from some of those images, many people put a huge amount of effort into bringing vehicles, appearing in military uniform of the day, talking about what was happening to the civilians. There was displays, there were stalls, there was all sorts of things. So a huge amount of effort. And overall, people were having a wonderful time, which was absolutely great, Ben. But as you walked around and you saw some of the relics of the Second World War, your mind, of course, was brought back on the utter bloodshed of that war. And as with the First World War, we were told never again. So I want to bring people's attention to the government, because while the government was very keen that people were out with that kind of event to remember VJ Day or VE Day, the government itself has got a very duplicitous message. Let's have a listen to Healy MP speaking.
Today, the 15th of August, marks the 80th anniversary of VJ Day, victory over Japan. Victory over Japan and the end of the Second World War. It reminds us why, for many in the UK, the celebrations for VE Day in 1945 were not the end of the story. For the Second World War would continue for another 3 months in the Far East. British, Commonwealth and Allied forces were still fighting a grueling battle. A coalition of nations refusing to bow in the face of tyranny. A coalition of nations forging alliances that still keep us safe today. But too many made the ultimate sacrifice. 30,000 British personnel, many more from Commonwealth and Allied forces, would lose their lives in the Far East campaign. Many who returned could never bring themselves to speak about the conditions they endured or the horrors they witnessed. We know the courage, we know the resilience they showed to bring about a brighter future and, after years of conflict, a lasting peace. Their courage, their dedication, their sacrifice still inspires every member of the armed forces today. And today, the British people remember and pay tribute.
I'll apologise to our audience for showing all of that little clip, but I wanted to show it all because, for me, I find the duplicity of what's going on here, Ben, just truly appalling. But also the presentation, the false sincerity, the music, the atmosphere, that here is this wonderful concerned man who is there in the world to make sure that we don't have any more bloodshed on that scale. And yet, of course, in the background, of course, the British government absolutely stoking up the war in Ukraine and, of course, fully supporting Israel in the horrors that have been happening in Gaza. Ben, I don't know whether you've got any comments on it, but these video clips, they're very polished and glossy, but I find them quite nauseating.
Yes, well, they're polishing over barbarity, like absolute horrors. My grandfather was a Japanese prisoner of war, and like he just said, he never spoke of it. Couldn't
even talk about it.
Yeah.
And one of the young men I spoke to at the event there, RAF Harrowbeer, at the weekend, also told me of relations that he'd been able to speak to when he was very, very small, some of whom would talk about horrors and some wouldn't. But is the government in UK working for peace? I think not. Is the King working for peace? Well, I think the jury's out, but I effectively think he's also on board, as we'll see. But let's have a listen to part of the King's message.
For the millions of families gathered around their wireless sets, and for their loved ones still serving far from home, it was the message a battle-weary world had long prayed for. The war is over, declared my grandfather, King George VI, in his address to the nation and Commonwealth on VJ Day 80 years ago today. 4 short words after 6 long years of bloodshed, fear and suffering. Seldom can a simple message have resonated with such a potent mix of relief, celebration and sorrow for those who never lived to see the glow of freedom's new dawn. On this day of profound remembrance, I speak to you in that same spirit of commemoration and celebration as we honour anew all those whose service and sacrifice saw the forces of liberty prevail.
Well, Ben, I'm certainly not frightened to say that I find the hypocrisy of the King truly breathtaking because, of course, is he setting out to help achieve peace in the world? Well, clearly he's not. We'll see in a minute his interfacing with Zelensky, but basically government and the royalty themselves talking one thing, but behind the public's back, fully engaged in making sure that the wars taking place, immense bloodshed, particularly in Ukraine, horrors also in Gaza, no effort to actually install peace, but plenty of effort to ramp up the weapons. Let's have a little look at headlines for the papers. And of course, there's only one thing to be shown on this, which is Zelensky. So the Times, Zelensky wants security guarantees before a deal. It's presented to the public as though Zelensky is the man that the British public should pay attention to. Who cares what Zelensky wants? He's helped to keep this vile war in Ukraine going for the length of time it has. We've got the Daily Telegraph. Europe tells Trump, don't give in to Putin. So this is part of the message. Putin bad, regime change got to happen in Russia. And of course, Ukraine with a proxy war, and the proxy troops are going to be the force to do it. The Daily Mail, D-Day. So now we've equated Ukraine to the Second World War. This is all part of propaganda aimed at the British public mind, in my appearance. And finally, from the Mirror, as I suppose we might expect, Ukraine war showdown, Europe takes a stand. So the paper's only putting one message across, and that is basically that the war has got to be ended on the lines that Zelensky thinks. Russia is bad, and if there's no peace agreement, then of course UK and the EU in particular prepared to pump in the weapons. But it's quite clear, Ben, that UK and Europe very nervous about where Trump may take these negotiations. Okay, so if you have a look at The Guardian today, as well as the Zelensky headline here, excuse me, UK and EU Zelensky side for talks with Trump. Down at the bottom was an interesting little headline, almost lost. IDF prepares to force 1 million people out of Gaza City. So here's another horror going on in the world today. Are we seeing British politicians, indeed, are we seeing the King put on the pressure to stop the violence in either place? Absolutely not. Rather, we've got the King, of course, meeting up with Zelensky. And if we just play a little bit of video here, we can see Zelensky arriving to meet the King. Notice he's not allowed to step forward until he was actually invited to do so. So it's very clear who's got the power in this particular incident. But of course, this is the King greeting this man like a long-lost friend. But Zelensky ultimately responsible for hundreds of thousands, if not million-plus deaths of his own countrymen fighting a proxy war for the UK and the West. Diane, just very quickly, I'll bring you in here. I find this truly appalling as this comes out of the woodwork. But essentially, we've had the same thing going on in America with this massive support for a war clearly designed to try and achieve regime change in Russia.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's something that people miss because we're seeing so much on the American side of the pond where people are still very pro-Trump, but they don't realize what's actually happening because he's doing so many things to distract from this actual agenda that's playing out in the background. And I think that the media is obviously contributing to that by saying, oh, he's wonderful, he's doing all these great things. But in the background, what he's actually doing is not something that the public is aware of. And maybe they wouldn't be so much on his side if they were being a little bit more honest about these deals that he's doing in the background.
That's a very, very good point, Diane, because, of course, the public being told very little in UK, and as we will mention in a few moments' time, we'll be pointing out that, of course, no real figures of the number of Ukrainian casualties. So this is a war only fought with apparently Russian casualties. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian troops simply don't matter. They are cannon fodder. I find it quite obscene. But I wanted to play once again the clip of Starmer and Zelensky, which I've called a love affair. Mike covered this with the UK Column News on Friday, but I think it's worth showing this appalling clip again to getting a feel for just how deep into the bed Keir Starmer is with Zelensky. So presumably Zelensky had to point out where Ukraine actually was on that huge globe so that Keir Starmer was fully up to speed. But as I saw them walking around the garden with the flowers, it really should have taken one of them to put on the dress and they would have been the loving couple. Now, this is what Keir Starmer had to say at the weekend about what was happening with regard to the talks. He said that Trump's efforts have brought us closer than ever before to ending Russia's illegal war in Ukraine. No mention, of course, of the provocations of the West. His leadership in pursuit of an end to the killing should be commended. Well, that's apart from the weapons which America's pumped in, of course. Whilst progress has been made, the next step must be further talks involving President Zelensky. The path to peace in Ukraine cannot be decided without him. So that's effectively saying that there is no path to peace without Zelensky himself. And he said it, Keir Starmer went on to say, I spoke to President Zelensky this morning, President Trump and other European partners, and we all stand ready to support this next phase. And the missive went on. I welcome the openness of the United States alongside Europe to provide robust security guarantees to Ukraine as part of any deal. This is important progress and will be crucial in deterring Putin for coming back for more. Ben, they seem to regard this as some sort of game in the language that's being used here. In the meantime, until Putin stops his barbaric assault, we will keep tightening the screws on his war machine with even more sanctions, which already had a punishing impact on the Russian economy and its people. Our unwavering support for Ukraine will continue as long as it takes. I just find this crass. I can't think of...
I'd imagine that Putin is quaking in his boots right now because Starmer's going to ramp up the sanctions.
Indeed. So sanctions and sanctions, but of course, the reality is that the Russians at the moment are overcoming not only Ukraine, but the full might of the West, including the United States. We'll just have a look at these little film clips here, which just show some of the activity on the front. And the point I'm making here is that the Ukrainians are being destroyed on the battlefield because the Russians are able to bring weapons to the front, which the Ukrainians can't, despite Western missile defense systems such as Patriot. The truth of the matter is that Ukrainian forces hammered on the front lines. And so whenever we look at casualty figures, we can be very sure that the Ukrainian casualty figures much higher than for the Russians. This is actually a video clip of the aftermath of an explosion of an ammunition dump, a very large Ukrainian ammunition dump. This once again shows that the power of the Russian weapons is having a huge effect. Now, most of the propaganda coming out of UK is coming from Defence HQ, Defence Intelligence. This is one of their latest reports, which says that President Putin has reiterated long-standing maximalist demands regarding Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. So no mention of what was happening in 2014 and the vicious attacks by Ukraine on the Donbass areas and the Russian-speaking people. Most of this is pure propaganda coming out of Defence HQ. But this is where it gets interesting because essentially they're crowing, they're mocking the Russians and saying it's going to take them 4.5 more years of war and approximately 1.9 million further Russian casualties killed and wounded if they're going to take the remaining ground in Ukraine. Now, of course, what there isn't in this report is any mention of I've put 1 million because this is the number being mentioned increasingly by analysts into the Ukrainian war, 1 million Ukrainian war dead. That is not being mentioned. Ukrainian casualties don't count because they are simply the proxy soldiers of the West. So we'll just end this segment by having a look at Keir Starmer, another video, but this is where he's saying, trust me because I only have the best interests of the UK population at heart.
Across Britain, people get up every morning to go to work, to get their kids to school. They pay their bills, try to save a bit. They graft. The factory workers, small business owners, teachers, carers, those who serve our country, whether that's in scrubs or the uniform of their regiment. The ordinary people, the men and women who make this country what it is. People like you and your family. And that's who I think of every time I face a decision. I know, like all of us, you are proud of our country. We all love our country. But I also know that at times it doesn't feel like Britain is fair enough for those people, the people who are getting on with it. And that's what drives me forward, at home or representing our interests abroad. I'm putting you first.
Well, the claim there, Ben, is very clear. He puts us first. But of course, in that BBC interview, he put the World Economic Forum first.
He certainly did, yes. It's quite entertaining hearing Starmer use the word graft. He's a real man of the people, isn't he? You're in scrubs or uniform. They focus group the hell out of that speech, I think.